The planet's sky looked like someone had punched a hole in a sun and then forgot to turn the brightness down. Corporal Marcus Trend squinted against the orange glare, dragging his boots through the ash as if it were sand at a very depressing beach. He muttered something unintelligible about the UN Peacekeeping Corps and their glorious knack for dropping humans into hellholes with names that sounded like someone sneezed while trying to pronounce elevator. Elavara. Charming place. No gravity problems, at least. Just the minor inconveniences of chemical storms, territorial insectoid raiders, and the pervasive smell of roasted ozone. His mission was clear enough. Sweep the zone for survivors. The ceasefire had been signed only hours ago, and most of the alien combatants had either retreated or vaporized. Still, protocol dictated that someone had to do the grim legwork. That someone, apparently, was Marcus. Probably because he owed his commanding officer 2 weeks' worth of rations after a poker game involving radioactive playing cards and a suspiciously smug android. The city, or what was left of it, was a lattice of collapsed obsidian towers and twisted metal overhangs. Somewhere below, Elavaran wind whispered through ruined catacombs. Marcus's HUD flickered now and then, static chewing the edge of his map display. His boots crunched over shattered glass that wasn't really glass, but rather some crystalline compound that shimmered irritably when stepped on. He was just about ready to declare the zone clear and find something that vaguely resembled a coffee substitute when his scanner pinged. Weak biosigns, low-frequency life form, probably a rat, an alien rat, with venom sacs. He sighed, turned on his body cam for bureaucratic cover, and followed the signal down a slope of debris into a sunken courtyard. There, draped awkwardly over a chunk of ceremonial statue, was a figure. She looked humanoid, enough that his brain didn't immediately file her under hostile. Her skin was white, almost iridescent in the alien sun, and her hair, long and tangled, was the color of dry wheat. Most notably, her ears, long and curved like leaves, twitched faintly at his approach. Her chest rose and fell shallowly. Marcus blinked. "Ma'am," he said, half out of habit, half out of please don't stab me. You're technically in a restricted zone. Also, maybe dying." Her eyes cracked open, two molten gold slits that took him in like a thermal scan. "Great," Marcus muttered. "Royalty. Why is it always royalty?" She opened her mouth to speak. Her voice was hoarse, lilting, and full of vowels that didn't belong together. He crouched beside her, checking her pulse. It thudded beneath his fingers, weak but present. "All right, hold still. You're in luck. I scored a B- in battlefield triage and a full A in talking to myself when nervous." He unpacked a med spray, glancing at her wound. Low abdomen, cauterized on one side, jagged entry on the other. Plasma burn. He hissed through his teeth. "Bet that hurts. Don't worry, I've got something that'll numb the pain and probably make your vision go wobbly. But hey, 2 out of 3. She grabbed his wrist as he applied the antiseptic, strength surprising despite her state. "You touch me," she whispered. "You bind us." Marcus blinked. "I mean, I'm flattered, but also alarmed. I'm really just trying to keep your insides inside." He sprayed anyway. She flinched. Her grip loosened. He finished the basics, bandage sealant, hydration drip, stabilizer patch, then gently propped her up against the base of the statue. "There," he said, brushing a strand of her hair out of her face. "Now you're only mostly dying. That's progress." Her eyes never left his. Not in a romantic way, more in a, you just accidentally started a galactic incident kind of way. "Do you have a name?" he asked, sitting back on his heels. "Valeth," she said slowly. "You, Marcus, Corporal Marcus Trend, human, peacekeeper, purveyor of mildly inappropriate jokes under duress." A beat passed. "I will remember this," she said. "Neat," he replied. "Most people just remember that I owe them money." He keyed his comm. "Base, this is Tren. I've got a civilian, female, severely injured, but stable. Request evac." Static. Then a garbled voice. "Copy that, Corporal." Coordinates locked, 10-minute ETA. He turned back to Valeth, who was studying his face with unnerving intensity. "Seriously," he said, "I was just trying to help." "Your help has consequences." "Well, that's ominous. Does it come with a manual?" She closed her eyes. You will find out soon enough. Fantastic. Can't wait. 10 minutes later, the evac shuttle arrived. Marcus helped load her onto the stretcher, keeping his tone light. Hang in there, Queen Shiny. We'll have you patched up in no time. She didn't reply, but her expression was something between a warning and a smirk. As the shuttle lifted off, Marcus leaned back against a support beam, let out a breath, and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Something tells me I'm going to regret that, he muttered. A breeze rolled through the ruins. His scanner beeped again. He ignored Marcus regretted everything by the time he was summoned into the administrative wing of the UN peacekeeping base. Not because of the paperwork, though there had been paperwork, so much paperwork. Not because of the suspiciously polite medical debriefings or the side eyes from the medtechs whispering behind gloved hands. No, Marcus regretted it the moment he stepped into the conference room and saw the 12-foot-tall alien guards flanking a throne that hadn't been there yesterday. It looked carved from bone, crystal, and someone's very bad dreams. Queen Violates sat atop it in full regalia. She was radiant, imperious, and visibly annoyed. Ah, Marcus said, blinking. This feels, formal. His commanding officer, a man so stiff he made cardboard seem reckless, cleared his throat with the subtle panic of someone who just realized they might be out of their political depth. Corporal Tren, he said, this is an emergency diplomatic session. You will speak with respect and answer all questions directly. Marcus nodded. Then after a beat, does that mean no jokes? Violates tilted her head, golden eyes narrowing. Queen Violates of the Lyran sovereignty, the officer continued, gesturing stiffly, wishes to address an urgent matter regarding you. That sounds fun, Marcus muttered. Is this where I get knighted or disintegrated? Silence, one of the guards boomed, antennae twitching ominously. Marcus raised his hands. Okay. Shutting up. Respect mode. Engaged. Violates rose to her feet with the fluid grace of someone entirely too used to controlling rooms. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried the unmistakable tone of a woman who had just made peace with being extremely unhappy. During the ceasefire, this human rendered aid to me on sacred ground. In doing so, he completed the touch of continuance, an ancient bond among my people. Sounds romantic, Marcus offered, before catching his superior's glare. Sorry, still engaged. Respect mode. The bond, Violates said, ignoring him, is irreversible. It triggers the royal progenitor cycle. Only sovereign bloodlines may receive it. I am now with child. The silence that followed could have frozen a star. Marcus stared. Wait. Are you saying we didn't? I gave you water and a bandage. That's it. There were no activities. Your biology interacted with mine in a rare synthesis. My species is attuned to tactile lineage transfer. Your contact was sufficient. Marcus looked at the medical officer who'd entered at some point. Please tell me there's a science-y way to say that she's just messing with me. The medic shook her head. Preliminary scans confirm gestation. Hybridization appears stable. You're kidding. This is a prank. You're all in on this. There's a camera crew behind that throne, right? No one laughed. Queen Violates descended the steps, her gaze never leaving him. Your action, while unintentional, carries significance. The child will possess diplomatic weight and could alter interstellar accords. Already my council stirs with unrest. There are those who see your presence as intrusion, others as opportunity. Marcus exhaled slowly. So let me get this straight. I patch up a wounded stranger in a war zone, and now I'm the father of a miracle baby who might trigger a galactic political meltdown? Yes, Violates said. Well, I guess that explains why breakfast gave me heartburn. The next 48 hours passed in a bureaucratic tornado. Official statements were drafted, redrafted, and shredded. Medical teams ran Marcus through more tests than a Martian shuttle pilot. News feeds leaked the story, despite blackout protocols, and overnight he went from forgettable corporal to the human catalyst. There were memes. Too many memes. The Lyran delegation remained at the base, and Marcus was assigned a new role. Diplomatic liaison/genetic curiosity. He shared a hallway with the Queen now, which was awkward, especially when their doors opened at the same time. "You again?" she said. "I live here," Marcus replied. "Well, I live next to here, unless you've annexed the hallway." "Not yet." They walked in silence for a beat. Then Marcus asked, "Do you feel okay? You know, considering." "My body is adapting," she said. "It will complete gestation in approximately 4 Earth months. I experience cravings." "Cravings?" "Warmed mineral paste, the scent of ozone, music composed exclusively in F minor." Marcus blinked. "That's oddly specific." She glanced at him. "You smell like salt and soap. It's tolerable." High praise from someone who once looked at me like I was a fungal infection. I still do. Later, in a meeting with the Interspecies Council representatives, Marcus sat stiffly between an insectoid ambassador who insisted on clicking every third word and a human general with a permanent grimace. The topic was custodial oversight, which was a fancy way of saying, who gets to decide what happens to the miracle fetus? "The father must remain within proximity of the Queen," one Lyran advisor declared, "for safety and stability." "He's a corporal," barked the human general. "He belongs to Earth Command." Marcus raised his hand. "Can I belong to neither? Maybe I'll start a cult. The Order of the Accidental Dad." Nobody laughed. Again. After the session, Marcus found Valeth alone on the observation deck, staring out at the holographic map of Elevara's fractured moons. "I keep expecting to wake up," he said. "You haven't." "Nope. Still here. Still me. Just with way more people invested in my DNA than I'm comfortable with." She didn't smile, but her posture softened. "I did not expect this either," she said. "My people saw you as an invader, yet your touch healed. I was just trying to help. Intentions are not always relevant." "Yeah," Marcus said, leaning on the rail. "But they should be." Silence hung between them. Then, "I told a journalist we met when you fell out of the sky riding a flaming dragon." She blinked. "Why?" "Because if I'm going to be remembered in history, I want it to sound cool." "You are a strange man. You say that like it's a bad thing." Marcus never thought he'd get fitted for ceremonial robes. He especially never thought those robes would have 12 silk layers, a high collar shaped like a mushroom fan, and a self-regulating thermal lining that smelled vaguely of mint and regret. But here he stood, arms spread like a particularly confused statue, while 2 Lyran attendants buzzed around him muttering about symmetry, honor glyphs, and something ominous called the joining rite. "Just once," Marcus grumbled, "I'd like to wear clothes that don't require an engineering degree." One of the attendants, a tiny thing with translucent skin and a forehead tattoo that blinked with ambient emotion, chittered. "This is an ancient design signifying kinship. Pretty sure this part is just a curtain with attitude." The other attendant hissed in approval. "Yes, and you wear it well." He wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a threat. Outside, the peacekeeping base looked like it had merged with an alien temple overnight. Columns of glowing stone had sprouted up along the courtyard, pulsing gently with color. According to one overexcited diplomat, the Lyran were weaving sanctity into the human structure. According to Marcus, it looked like the set of a soap opera where everyone had too many antennas. He finally escaped the cloth cocoon and shuffled toward the open atrium where Queen Valeth waited, flanked by her advisors. She looked calm, regal, possibly bored. "You look like someone folded you into a tapestry," she said. "I feel like a dinner mint at a royal buffet." "You will adjust." "Is that Lyran for get used to being mildly humiliated in public?" She said nothing, which Marcus had come to understand meant he'd won the round. The joining rite, as he had learned only yesterday, was not a wedding. Definitely not. It was, according to several Lyran scholars, a ceremonial recognition of lineage intertwinement with socio-political implications, which sounded a lot like a wedding with extra paperwork and fewer buffet options. The crowd, composed of diplomats, soldiers, and a few opportunistic journalists pretending to be waitstaff, stood in respectful silence as the rite began. A priest-like figure stepped forward, holding a staff that glowed with slow pulses matching Valeth's heartbeat. That was no metaphor. The staff was synced with her biofield, because of course it was. Through convergence, we honor the continuation of existence, the priest intoned. Marcus whispered out of the corner of his mouth. That sounds suspiciously like something you'd say before sacrificing a goat. Valeth whispered back, we only use goats on solstice festivals. He tried not to look alarmed. The ceremony was long, full of symbolic gestures involving touching palms over a prism and reciting vows that made Marcus's tongue cramp. When it was done, the priest gave a subtle nod, and a soft chime echoed through the atrium. The Lyran crowd bowed. The humans clapped awkwardly, then looked around and started bowing too, unsure of the protocol. Marcus leaned closer to Valeth. So now what? We raised the kid in a nice 2-bedroom spaceship with a breakfast nook. We returned to the chamber for diplomatic briefings. Ah, romance. Back in the chamber, less ornate, but still heavy on weird furniture, they were joined by Earth's ambassador, a lean woman with the facial expression of a tax audit. She tapped a sleek datapad with one finger. The child has become a point of extreme interest across 9 systems. 3 species have offered treaties in anticipation of the heir's birth. 2 have threatened sanctions, and 1 has proposed naming the child a divine avatar of rebirth. Marcus stared. We're not even sure the kid will like finger paints yet. The situation is volatile, the ambassador said dryly. You are a linchpin. Great. I've always wanted to be a piece of volatile linchpin pie. Valeth, to her credit, remained impassive. The child will unite or divide, she said. That is the truth of legacy. Marcus sat back, sighing. No pressure, kiddo. Just rearrange the balance of power in the galaxy. Later that evening, Marcus found himself walking the perimeter gardens, which now had levitating shrubs and musical moss. He was starting to like the weird. It felt like living inside a science fiction novel, written by a poet with too much caffeine. He paused as he heard humming. Valeth stood near one of the moss towers, her hands resting on her stomach. The melody was soft, full of notes that resonated like crystal. You sing? I remember, she said. My mother sang this to me before the war fractured everything. Marcus stood beside her. You miss her? She was complicated, duty-bound, distant, but she believed in unity. Sounds like you inherited her job. And her enemies. He nodded. Well, I've inherited ceremonial robes and impending fatherhood, so we're both doing great. She glanced at him. Do you fear what comes next? All the time, he said. But I also fear egg salad, so I'm not the best barometer. Still, you remain. I've got nowhere better to be. There was a pause. I've been thinking, he added, maybe we teach the kid both languages. Lyran vowels and human sarcasm. Best of both worlds. She considered it. A dangerous combination. Exactly. Galactic domination by wordplay. For the first time in days, she smiled. And Marcus, dressed like an overdressed curtain and standing next to an alien queen, humming lullabies to a future that terrified them both, realized something else entirely. He wasn't just stuck in this. He was part of it now. It started with a diplomatic lunch and a projectile fruit. The fruit, roughly the size of a toddler's head and encased in a translucent membrane, launched itself off the ceremonial platter the moment someone mentioned trade routes. Marcus ducked just in time, narrowly avoiding what would have been a tragic and deeply sticky interstellar incident. It's called a Corlin burst pod, Valeth explained calmly, as 2 aides scrambled after the rolling orb. They react to conflict energy in conversation. Great, Marcus muttered. Weaponized fruit with opinions. The lunch had been arranged in the hologarden, an open-air terrace simulating a serene Lyran meadow, complete with fluttering blue air wasps and grass that gently rearranged itself to match your emotional state. Marcus's seat was surrounded by a particularly nervous patch that kept turning beige. Across the table sat Ambassador Kretz of the Kaplari conglomerate, a being composed of sentient fungal colonies shaped like a business suit. Kretz was here to negotiate pre-birth trade privileges for the unborn royal offspring, and he did so with the charisma of a spreadsheet. Production forecasts, Kretz intoned, indicate a 37% increase in Lyran export potential following hybrid air recognition. Marcus poked at his shimmering salad. You do realize the hybrid air currently doesn't have teeth? Precisely. Optimal time for market saturation. Valeth raised a hand before Marcus could respond with something scathing, involving diaper subsidies and economic parasitism. The child is not a product. Not yet, Marcus added, earning a glare. After Kretz left, leaving behind a contract scroll that smelled like fermented socks, Marcus and Valeth retreated to the inner sanctum for what she called a decompression ritual, and he called a chance to sit down without offending three governments. The sanctum's ambient lighting adjusted automatically to their moods. When Marcus flopped onto the biomesh couch, the walls dimmed to a sleepy indigo. I miss chairs, he groaned. Real ones, with 4 legs and 0 sentience. Chairs are inefficient. So is this pregnancy diplomacy tour. Valeth turned to him, gold eyes narrowed. You mock this role, but you perform it. I mock everything. It's my coping mechanism. That and snacks. She paused. I have developed a craving for your planet's sour pretzel coils. Marcus blinked. You mean pickles? Coils, pickled, yes. Okay, 2 things. 1, that's deeply concerning. 2, now I want pickles too. As if summoned by their shared craving, a service drone rolled into the room and extended a compartment. Inside sat a dish of pickles, artfully arranged around a glowing cube of something that looked suspiciously like jellied starlight. Marcus squinted. I'm not eating the cube. It enhances fertility. I really don't need. Okay, moving on. Later, while reviewing diplomatic messages on a holoscreen shaped like an unfolding petal, Marcus came across a curious dispatch. It was encoded in a hybrid dialect he didn't recognize, tagged with a Class 5 alert. Hey, he said, nudging Valeth, this message has your family seal. But it's not from here. She frowned and leaned in. That's from the outer crest. You have relatives in the galactic suburbs? They were exiled during the Great Fragmentation. The message unfolded. A projection hovered. An older Lyran woman with the same yellow eyes, more sunken, and a laugh that sounded like cracked crystal. If you're seeing this, then your bond has taken root, the woman said. The crest will not sit idle. The air is ours by blood. Return to the old path, or we will come for the child. Marcus stared. Well, that's subtle. Valeth was still. Too still. My aunt, Silith, she once led a rebellion against the crown. And now she wants a royal grandbaby coup? They see the child as a symbol, a tool. Marcus stood. Then it's time we got ahead of this. I don't do well with veiled threats, especially not from relatives. I barely survived Thanksgiving back home. Valeth stood beside him. We must go to the spires. The spires? The ancient heart of Lyran memory. It will recognize the heir's blood. If we claim it first, it strengthens our position. And what? They won't chase us into a sacred zone? Number, they would simply try to kill us more quietly. Reassuring. The journey to the spires required an escort team, an invisibility shroud woven from auric vines, and a transport vehicle that resembled a jellyfish crossed with a coffee grinder. As they prepared to depart, Marcus pulled on a travel cloak lined with adaptive polymer. He checked his sidearm. You know, I joined the peacekeeping corps because I thought it sounded low drama. Valeth handed him a slender blade with a hilt shaped like a spine. Then fate has a cruel sense of irony. He tucked the blade into his belt. Remind me again, are we doing this for diplomacy, legacy, or because your aunt's a maniac? Yes. The spires loomed in the distance, towers of smooth crystal that hummed with history. Even from the transport's viewport, Marcus felt a tug, like some ancient library was calling him to overdue responsibility. As the vehicle descended, he turned to Valeth. Let's say we survive this. She arched a brow. Optimistic. Would it be weird if I said I've started to like all this? The robes, the moss, even the bureaucracy. She tilted her head. Very weird. Yeah, well, it's better than being bored. She gave him a rare smile. We make a strange pair, soldier. We're going to make an even stranger kid. The spires awaited. So did the future. The spires didn't glow. They shimmered with the kind of ancient, sentient indifference that made Marcus feel like an insect asking for Wi-Fi in a monastery. The entrance pulsed once, like a sigh of recognition, and then split open. Inside was not a chamber, but a memory, shared, living, and terrifying in its scope. Valeth gripped his arm. "The spires don't show what you want," she warned. "They show what you need." "Great," Marcus muttered. "So probably not a sandwich." They stepped into a sea of light that folded around them, pulling them deeper until the walls disappeared. Suddenly, Marcus was on Earth again, 19, ducking debris in a refugee corridor, pressing gauze to a child's head while artillery thundered in the distance. Then he blinked, and he was back in the Lyran birthing hall, watching Violeth unconscious and bloodied, covered in the strange golden ichor of her kind, clutching his hand in unconscious pain. Violeth watched her own memories unravel, her mother's final blessing, the betrayal of her aunt, the silent oath taken under the roots of the crown tree. Her face was still, unreadable. Then the vision cracked. A new memory formed, one not yet written. It showed a child with yellow eyes and soft human skin, standing between two empires. The child spoke with laughter and with reason. Not war, not fear. Possibility. The vision shattered. The chamber returned. "That was," Marcus began. "The spires have accepted the air," Valeth said softly. "And us." A horn sounded. Not musical, tactical, and alert. From above, ships began to descend, sleek, obsidian, bearing the insignia of the outer crest. Saleth had arrived. Marcus grabbed his communicator. "Guess the in-laws aren't here for cookies." Outside, a full cadre of crest warriors formed a semicircle, weapons drawn, energy pulsing from the crystal blades they carried. Sileth descended last, her robes like liquid shadow, her long ears marked with ceremonial iron. "Step aside," she said. "The blood is ours." Marcus stepped forward. "Do all Lyran family gatherings end with threats and hovering death?" Sileth ignored him. "The spires recognize the bloodline, which means it belongs to the crest." Valeth drew her own blade. "You abandoned your claim when you raised arms against our people." Sileth sneered. "I raised arms against stagnation." "I still do." Marcus cleared his throat. "Look, I get it. Really. I've had some pretty dysfunctional Thanksgivings. But if you're here to threaten a pregnant queen and her glorified bodyguard turned dad by accident, I'm going to have to file a strongly worded complaint with the universe." Sileth's hand twitched. "You are irrelevant." Marcus drew his weapon. "I'm a soldier. Irrelevant is what I'm best at. But I'm also very stubborn and occasionally lucky." There was a hum, deep and strange. The spires began to resonate, a sound that wrapped around the air and changed it. The warriors hesitated. The crystals lining the canyon pulsed. Then, in a moment no one expected, a smaller hum responded. A figure stepped forward from the transport shuttle. It was the midwife drone, standard issue, its usual voice modulator chirping in diagnostic static. Then it spoke. "Air's pulse confirmed. Genetic resonance with both bonded parents active. Royal will acknowledged. Immediate influence area secured by Spire's directive. Aggression protocols revoked." Sileth froze. "What is this?" "Ancient law," Valeth said softly. "The Spires have claimed the heir not as a pawn, but as a monarch. Even unborn, the child now holds sovereign agency." Marcus squinted. "Did our kid just become boss of the planet?" "In so many words." A long silence. Celeste seethed, but her warriors stepped back. Even rebellion had limits. Even she could not defy ancient law in the place where the law was born. She turned, silent, her cloak whispering curses in a dead dialect. When the ships were gone, Marcus let out a breath. "So, that went well." Valeth turned to him. "You stayed. Wasn't going to run off, especially not when my kid just inherited a solar system." "You've changed," he shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe I'm just leaning into the weirdest chapter of my life. Would you ever return to Earth?" "I don't know. I used to think I'd go back after peacekeeping, grab a drink, watch some bad movies. But now, I've got a queen, a floating crib made of light, and a fetus with diplomatic immunity. I think I'll stay." Valeth smiled faintly. Then stay as consort, as protector, as father. He raised a brow. No pressure, huh? The child chose you, and so did I. They stood there, under the silent gaze of the spires, while the stars shifted slowly above. Weeks later, the first official portrait was taken. Marcus wore something uncomfortable that glittered, holding a squirming bundle wrapped in ceremonial silk. The child had his nose and her eyes and kicked like a martial artist with vengeance in their soul. Smile, said the drone photographer. I am smiling. You are grimacing. This is my formal smile. The flash went off. Somewhere the image beamed across the quadrant. A soldier, a queen, a child. The strangest family ever to rewrite an empire. And Marcus, standing awkwardly but proudly in the middle of it, whispered, I just wanted to help. He glanced at the baby. But if you grow up to be a dictator, I'm blaming your mother. The child giggled. Closure echoed quietly between them. Elias found a quiet corner under a semi-sentient tree that offered complimentary shade and light massage. He sat there, shoes off, thinking about how he'd once been a botanist with a fondness for dumb jokes and the occasional existential panic attack. Now he was a consort, possibly a co-ruler, definitely the subject of several fan-made love songs trending on interplanetary social feeds. Lysanthe joined him, reclining beside him with her shoes abandoned and her starlight weave robe faded to a soft shade of amused tranquility. I used to think power came from distance, she said. The further you are from the people, the more they believe in you. But now, you've realized it comes from sarcastic commentary and shared snacks? Exactly. She curled her long fingers through his. Do you ever wonder what's next? All the time, he said, but I stopped needing the answer to be impressive. They spent the evening watching the stars realign above the dome. One of the colony's astronomers informed them that the atmospheric light show had accidentally triggered the migration cycle of a local species of floating, giggling orbs. They were harmless, affectionate, and immediately imprinted on the queen, following her in a line and mimicking her posture like interstellar ducklings. She named them after historical tyrants. Stalin, no licking, Elias chuckled. You're going to be a strange queen. I've always been one. Stranger. The days that followed were a flurry of diplomatic cleanup. Treaties were redrawn, trade routes restructured. Entire empires asked for official clarification on how to address a royal marriage sealed by malfunctioning AI. The Zarathish Council, realizing the galaxy hadn't imploded, voted 6-2 in favor of allowing romantic aberrations with exceptionally low probability of interstellar collapse. Lysanthe's throne was relocated to orbit above New Penumbra in a ship shaped like a poem empowered by solar affection. She refused the traditional entourage in favor of a crew composed of misfits, thinkers, and 2 former smugglers who now managed catering. Elias returned to his greenhouse, renovated and upgraded with alien tech that allowed plants to hum softly when they were happy. He spent his days growing things, writing stories, and occasionally giving impromptu lectures titled, How Not to Die When Dating Royalty. They didn't rule, not exactly, but they advised, listened, corrected, and celebrated. Their marriage became a metaphor that people argued over in cafes and starports. Some called it rebellion, others a miracle. But to them it was a Wednesday, and the spiced bread needed to come out of the oven. On their 1-year anniversary, they visited Earth, walked through a field under a sky thick with satellites and possibility. Elias pointed at the stars. That one there, that's where we nearly caused a war. Ah, yes, Lysanthe said, kissing his cheek. I remember. I wore purple and you fell over a chair. I fall with style. You fall with poetry. They sat under the satellites. The universe continued, messy, luminous, absurd. Empires would rise, fall, and occasionally dance. But somewhere between all that chaos, there was a queen who chose a human who chose a risk, and a love that disturbed the stars just enough to make room for more. You broadcast unauthorized philosophical horticulture to 6 star systems. That one was an accident, but in fairness, the shrub had good instincts. She stared at him. He stared back. The air pulsed faintly between them, awkwardly as if unsure whether to be reverent or terrified. "Proceed," she said at last. "Cool. This way." He turned and led her toward the colony center, walking backwards while gesturing. "Try not to step on the glowing tiles. They're part of an art installation/pothole repair initiative." Mixed results. The visit was meant to be brief, a gesture. But Lysanthi did not leave after the standard 90 minutes, nor after the first diplomatic luncheon, during which Elias accidentally sat in the High Regent's chair and then justified it by claiming to be a fan of symmetry. He was, by any measure, a poor diplomat. He made jokes during briefings. He renamed files to things like Space Nonsense 1 and Galactic Shenanigans Vive 2 Final. He wore mismatched socks with tiny printed stars on them, and he told her, quietly over shared tea beside the colony's underwhelming artificial lake, that he had once tried to write a novel about a boy who befriended a sentient comet, but gave up because the comet had better dialogue than the boy. Lysanthi had laughed, not smiled. Laughed. The sound caused her entourage to suffer minor cardiac distress. One aide fainted. The AI monitoring her vital signs began pinging the emergency channel. She laughed again when Elias, upon encountering her royal scribe, asked if he was a plot device with eyebrows. She laughed when he compared high council debates to a sloth fight choreographed by anxiety, and she laughed when he said her empire's emblem looked like a sad starfish. But dignified, he added quickly, a dignified, possibly dangerous starfish. Her neural advisors began sending alerts. Emotional deviation, attachment anomaly, trajectory drift. She disabled them with a blink. Days passed, then a week, then 2. Rumors surged across sectors. The Queen was off-grid. The Queen had defected. The Queen had become romantically involved with a human poet gardener who believed soup should be its own food group. None of these reports were confirmed, but they weren't denied either. And far from the political echo chambers of Zarethion, Lysanthi sat beneath a rustling sky dome, sipping tea brewed from local moss, and asked Elias Rune the most dangerous question a queen could ask. "What would happen," she said, "if I didn't go back?" The colony's morning did not begin with dawn so much as with a long, hesitant flicker. The atmospheric simulation grid over New Penumbra had been malfunctioning for weeks, so the sunrise appeared in sporadic bursts, like a strobe light operated by someone with commitment issues. Elias Rune opened his eyes to the third false dawn and groaned into his pillow. Outside his window, a sanitation drone hovered, emitting a hum pitched precisely at mildly annoying, and paused only to declare, "Debris removal commencing. Please avoid existence in this sector." Elias gave it a thumbs up through the glass. "Love you too, Susan." The drone did not respond. Susan never did. He rolled out of bed, tripped over a pair of shoes that may or may not have been his, and stepped into a shirt that read, "I have diplomatic immunity," from Mornings. As he brewed coffee with a device cobbled together from parts of a food printer and a defunct translation unit, his interface chimed with exactly one notification. Visitor still in residence. Queen Lysanthi of the Zarethish crown. He sipped. Huh. It had been 13 days since she arrived, and 13 days since she hadn't left. That was long enough for the colony to shift from panic to bureaucratic bewilderment. The governor had returned from the hospital with a limp and an existential dread he refused to talk about. The colonists had responded by electing Elias to the position of unofficial royal liaison, mostly because he had once correctly pronounced "your radiant, serene endurance." His duties included ensuring Lysanthi didn't touch anything explosive, confuse the governor's pet lizard for a political hostage, or get lured into any spontaneous municipal elections. He strolled out into the colony square, where Lysanthi stood in front of a public message board, frowning at a flyer that read, "Karaoke night, BOB. Bring your own bravado." "You look like someone considering war," he said. "I am considering the concept of boogie. It's a dangerous path. Many have fallen." She looked at him, then back at the flyer. "I require clarification. Does this night of karaoke involve strategic competition?" He thought about it. Well, there's humiliation, public judgment, and sometimes betrayal by teammates who said they knew the lyrics. So yes, basically. I accept the challenge. Karaoke night, as it turned out, was held in the community center, an aging dome-shaped structure with acoustics optimized for poultry exhibitions. A sign out front declared "Sing or be singular," which no one had understood since its installation. Lysanthi arrived precisely 1 minute late, causing 5 people to spontaneously forget how to breathe. She wore a simple garment Elias had helped her find, a long gray coat with patches from various colony teams, science, maintenance, food safety. It gave her the air of an interstellar mechanic who could also annex your moon. She approached the stage with the calm of someone about to rewrite a treaty. The audience tensed. The machine blinked, waiting. "What is this song labeled Total Eclipse of the Heart?" she asked. "Tragic, dramatic, human mating ritual, or emotional breakdown? It's hard to say," Elias said. "Perfect." Her rendition was less performance and more royal declaration. She sang with the intensity of someone conquering a system. On the final crescendo, a panel in the ceiling gave out from sheer reverberation. Someone wept. Someone else proposed marriage to a stranger. Afterwards, she returned to her seat beside Elias, sipping the local beverage labeled carbonated extract of berry-like things. "I believe I dominated the ritual," she said. "You either won it or redefined it. Hard to tell." As the crowd resumed its chaos, Elias leaned back and looked at her. "You know, I don't think the galaxy's ready for you to be like this. Free? Yeah. Or like having fun." She gave a small, dangerous smile. "Let them adjust." By the following day, rumors had spread to every major news grid in the quadrant. A queen had gone rogue. A human had possibly seduced her using only charm, sarcasm, and substandard laundry skills. The headlines ranged from Zarethish dynasty in flux to royalty in rebellion. The Chile connection? In the halls of Zarethion, the High Council convened. They were robed in thermally adaptive regalia and glowed faintly from the stress of prolonged political proximity. "She's jeopardizing the diplomatic stabilization of 4 trade corridors," said Minister Erath, who had replaced sleep with caffeine pills and cold fear. "She has not declared abdication," muttered Councillor Seam, "but she wears casual jackets. I've seen the images." "What if she intends to marry the human?" someone whispered, and then everyone began shouting until the emergency silence field activated. Back on New Penumbra, Elias was trying to explain the local concept of leisure to the Queen during a trip to the hydroponic gardens. "It's like productivity, except useless and satisfying." "Ah, like Senate hearings." They walked between glowing rows of nutrient-rich vegetation. The Queen paused beside a vine bearing glittering crimson fruits. "These are forbidden on my homeworld." "Why?" "They ferment too easily. There was an incident, a wedding, a revolt, an opera." Elias nodded as if this made sense. She plucked one and bit it, then another, then 3. "I understand now why revolts were involved." Later that evening, as they sat watching the artificial sky try its best to resemble twilight, Lysanthi turned to him. "I cannot stay," she said. He looked at her. "I figured. My absence destabilizes everything. Empires are brittle when they lean on ritual. You're not just ritual. Number. But I wear it like a second skin." A pause stretched between them. "You could take it off," he said. "Just sometimes, like a hat or pants." She laughed softly. "I fear you would convince me of anything, given enough metaphors." He reached out and gently touched her long, curved ear, the way one might trace the edge of a question. "You ever think maybe the galaxy needs a little destabilizing?" She didn't answer, but her hand found his, and in the moment between pulse and breath, a plan began to take shape. Delicate, treasonous, and utterly sincere. 3 weeks into the Queen's unsanctioned retreat, New Penumbra had become the center of an escalating interstellar migraine. The Zarathish fleet, silent, immense, and shaped like a choir of judgmental knives, hovered just outside the colony's orbit, broadcasting a polite but ominous looped message. Her radiance is expected to return. Failure to comply will result in increasingly disappointed diplomatic statements. Inside the colony, morale was mixed. Some colonists were thrilled to have royalty sipping moss tea on their benches, and occasionally asking profound questions like, is bread supposed to feel emotional? Others were less thrilled, especially the administrators who now had to respond to 17 messages an hour from galactic envoys with words like insubordination, diplomatic limbo, and cake diplomacy. Elias Roon, having accepted his fate as unofficial royal companion/planetary scapegoat, spent his mornings intercepting messages meant for the Queen and forwarding only the least apocalyptic. One communique simply read, "Where is she?" and had been accidentally sent 6 times in all caps. He replied, probably pondering the nature of toast. Please hold. The Queen, meanwhile, was holding court in Elias's living room, which had been reluctantly reclassified as a provisional diplomatic sanctuary after she declared the couch a throne of acceptable squishiness. She sat cross-legged, analyzing human cartoons on a glitchy projector while scribbling notes. This creature, she said, pointing at a wide-eyed animation with wild hair and improbable gravity defiance, has defied death 12 times and is rewarded with laughter. Is this normal human mythology? That's called a Saturday morning, Elias said. Ancient cultural rite. We used to gather and watch these with cereal. I desire cereal. You can have cereal. I also desire to escape forced marriage negotiations conducted by political consortiums who smell like vacuum-sealed betrayal. He poured her a bowl of puffed corn bits shaped like stars. You can have that too, 1 spoonful at a time. Outside, the tension thickened. A Zarethish ambassador, spherical, translucent, and slightly agitated, materialized in the colony's plaza, accompanied by a holographic document that screamed, "Negotiation initiated in 14 dialects." Governor Lorb, who had only recently recovered from the staircase incident, stared at the ambassador with the hollow eyes of a man who once mistook a royal footbath for a buffet. "We're not authorized for this level of diplomacy," he said, nudging Elias forward. "You, do your thing." "My thing? You talk to her. You're weirdly effective." Elias sighed, straightened his galaxy's okayest diplomat badge, and stepped toward the ambassador, who immediately scanned him and blinked disapprovingly. "You are the consort? Strong word. Let's go with civilian emotionally entangled with extreme geopolitical consequences." The ambassador's surface shimmered. "Return the Queen, or explain." "She's doing karaoke." A pause. "What is karaoke?" Elias tried to explain. Music, expression, personal truth expressed in off-key defiance of silence. The ambassador made a low warbling sound. "This is war." Back inside, Lysanthi stood at the window, watching the diplomatic standoff unfold with a cup of rehydrated berry tea in hand. "They're afraid. They're bureaucrats," Elias said. "Fear is their cardio." "They don't fear me. They fear change. They fear what I might become. Here." "Human?" She smiled. "Something worse." A person. Elias joined her at the window. "You really want this? All of it?" "I want to choose something for once. I want toast?" "Yes. And you." There was a beat of silence that made the walls want to shift away for privacy. "Then we'll need a plan," he said. "Something bold, treason adjacent, stylish." Lysanthi raised an eyebrow. "Do you have such a plan?" "Absolutely not. But I do have duct tape and access to the colony's abandoned satellite uplink, which I believe we can reprogram to look like a royal proclamation if we talk fast enough." Later that evening, they sneaked through the ventilation tunnels of the colony like 2 teenagers trying to escape curfew. The tunnels were lined with glowing moss and support beams etched with the doodles of bored engineers, flying toasters, robots with mustaches, and an accurate rendition of the governor crying over paperwork. Elias emerged first into the uplink station, dusty, humming with static, and currently occupied by a retired AI known only as Reginald. Reginald greeted them with a garbled tune that may have been jazz or a protest. "I require a broadcast override," Lysanthi said. Reginald blinked 3 times. "Password, Royal Code Ether Sigma. Also acceptable. Please. Please." The system activated. They stood before the camera. The feed shimmered, then stabilized. Across 16 sectors, tens of billions tuned in. on warships and embassies, in hidden fortresses carved into asteroids. The queen stood beside a human in a shirt that said, "Love me, I'm a planetary crisis." She spoke. "I am Lysanthe, rightful sovereign of the Zarethish crown. I have not been taken. I have not defected. I have simply paused. Paused to learn, to breathe, to sing badly in public, and to understand that power without joy is a weapon turned inward." Across the galaxy, reactions varied. Some gasped, some cheered. One admiral burst into tears over a bowl of noodles. On Zarethion, 1,000 bureaucrats fainted in unison. Elias leaned into frame. "Also, we're getting married. Probably, unless I trip and fall into a sun." Lysanthe added, "There will be cake." The screen went black. They stared at the silence that followed, holding hands and breath. Finally, Elias said, "So, you think we bought ourselves, what, an hour? Perhaps a day. What do we do with it?" She smiled. "We plan a wedding that will disturb all the stars." The royal wedding planner arrived on the back of a genetically enhanced snail. It was not a metaphor. The creature, known as a ceremonial ambuloid of dignity, moved at approximately 1 meter per hour and emitted celebratory glitter from its antennae. The wedding planner, a sentient cube named Falthrix, who spoke entirely in conditional subjunctives, descended from his saddle and announced, "If this union were to proceed, which by current galactic treaties should not happen, then I would be the one to reluctantly ensure its aesthetic tolerability." Elias, who had just returned from a frustrating encounter with a vending machine that refused to recognize his biometric ID due to emotional instability, squinted at the cube. "You're going to help us get married?" "Assuming the variables align and my professional integrity survives this scandal, yes." The colony had been in a state of cautiously escalating euphoria since the Queen's broadcast. Local merchants began offering royal romance specials, everything from heart-shaped nutrient bars to bootleg Lysanthe bobbleheads. The governor issued a statement officially welcoming intergalactic matrimonial unity while privately drafting his resignation letter for the 5th time that week. Queen Lysanthe took to wandering the colony's common areas in borrowed clothing and a light cloak, listening to conversations and occasionally correcting people's myths about her. "No, I have never turned a man into vapor for interrupting me. Yes, I do sleep, preferably with tea and 5 pillows. No, my ears are not detachable. That would be weird." The real planning took place inside the unused communications dome, now converted into what Elias referred to as Wedding HQ, complete with blueprints, cultural guides, and a spreadsheet labeled Ceremony Chaos Index, Live Update Enabled. "According to my projections," Falthrix announced, "your wedding will either end in interstellar reconciliation, a minor war, or a musical number involving 11 species." "That last one sounds promising," Elias said. "We will require a venue with neutral symbolism, adaptive architecture, and zero risk of cultural insult." "I can offer the hydroponic dome," Governor Lorb muttered from the doorway, holding what appeared to be a slightly nervous cactus. "It's technically sacred only to the fungus." "Perfect," said Lysanthe. "Let the fungal deities be witnesses." The guest list became its own diplomatic crisis. The Zarethish Council refused to attend unless granted the right to glare meaningfully at someone every 15 minutes. The Galactic Consortium demanded cheese platters from each planetary quadrant. The colony's entertainment director insisted on including a human tradition called the chicken dance, which nearly caused Falthrix to dissolve himself in protest. Meanwhile, Elias's cousin Juno sent a message from Mars that read, "You're marrying an alien queen? About time someone in the family did something interesting. Aunt Myra wants pictures. Also, I'm bringing my dog. He bites royalty." Lysanthe, preparing her vows with the care of someone composing a peace treaty, sat